All right, we're back at, is it health or HLTH?
I think it's choose your own adventure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's choose your, and also Nico, the founder and president of Redox, he is also trying to create a movement to call it Health. so now we have 3 different options.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, we're at either HLTH or health.
Yes.
Great conference in Vegas. I'm joined by Mike Biselli.
It's great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming. I want to get into your background in a sec, but I wanted to highlight you started a podcast. We're fellow podcasters.
We are
now.
fellow podcasters
So
now.
That is neat.
Yeah, I'm about a little over 2 months into the journey, and it's been quite the learning experience, all in very good ways. But yes, we are now kindred souls.
So talk about the podcast's name, background.
Yeah, so the podcast, you can find it on your player at just search Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. But the whole notion is to highlight the stories of the innovators and the game changers that are reimagining our world for the better, and whatever that might be, whether it be social movements, technology, or otherwise. Big companies or startups or entrepreneurs, but to highlight those folks that are deeply passionate to make our world a better place. Those are the ones that we're talking to on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I imagine your experience has been like mine, where the majority of people you talk to have a good story to tell in healthcare, because there's something driving. It's I just had a podcast where we were talking about how hard it is to be an entrepreneur. It's not easy.
It's not easy at all, especially in this industry, right? You have to find something that's going to rip you out of bed every day, because this is not an easy journey. So yeah, it's incredible. From some of the stories that we've had on the podcast, everything from literally scientifically reversing type 2 diabetes to a gentleman that fell into 15 years of addiction and came out of the phoenix, rose out of the ashes, and now he's built a global sober tribe. Just these stories are a woman that has created these documentaries around mental well-being for our youth. Just the stories are incredible. Yeah, so Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli.
Okay, and did that start from a passion from you, just wanting to put together that story?
I think we'll probably be talking a little bit more about this on the podcast. It came just through my experience of the campus that I've been fortunate enough to build in downtown Denver. Leaders like you that I get to hang out with around the world, and being fortunate to spend time with these folks that are deeply dedicated and passionate to reimagine the health of our world. And so I said, what the heck? Let's instead of having one-on-one conversations, let's have others hear these stories as well.
Yeah. And imagine you're like me, that you're not shy about talking.
Oh, I'm certainly not. I'm sure you can probably tell that already on this show.
Yep. So give us your background. When did healthcare come into the picture for you?
Really good question, boy. So actually, healthcare came into the picture by accident. So I was very fortunate to earn a full-ride scholarship to play football and study at Stanford University. First in my family ever to go to college. And did that by the way of power of community. And again, you're going to see why that notion of power of community has influenced everything I have done and continue and will do. It was this small community in northern Nevada that rallied around me to help me achieve this dream, to use football as a vehicle to be the first one in my family to go to school. And after I got done playing football at Stanford, I walked out of there with 2 degrees, but then just accidentally graduated at the same time that the .com bust had occurred. So I look around, here I am in Silicon Valley, .com bust, and it's a complete desert in regards to jobs. And then one day, literally by accident, I get a call from a recruiter, and this recruiter says, "Mike, are you interested in the medical device industry? And here's the comp package." And I said, I had no idea about the medical device industry, but please tell me more. And one thing led to another. That's how I got into healthcare. The first 10 years were with large device companies, right? So think of like, your J&Js, your Medtronics of the world. And then from there, I moved to Denver in 2008, still working with a large device company at the time. And then in 2011, I jumped off the entrepreneurial cliff with my co-founder at the time, and we built a digital platform to directly connect procurement managers within surgery centers and device companies to remove the sales rep when he or she was not offering any clinical value to the provider, to the facility, and most importantly, to the patient. And as you can imagine, that agitated a lot of device companies, which is great as a startup. That's your job. And so we built that platform in Denver, Colorado, where I still reside. And through that, ended up eventually selling that off at the end of 13, and then went on the journey with Catalyst, which I know we'll dive in a little bit more. So that's kind of the quick and easy story of how I just got into healthcare in the first place.
That's great. Well, a quick question that I never thought I would ask, but I'm glad hearing your background. How much did competitive sports help build the skills? Because I played ice hockey in college, and I imagine you're like me, where learning to be a part of a team, doing something hard, like there's so many just things that come out of competitive sports.
And that's what and you're spot on, Ryan. I think that's what we're going to talk a little bit more on the podcast is, and I just said it a couple moments ago, is this power of community. What does that mean? Power of teams, power of togetherness. It has influenced everything that I have done in life through my own personal relationships, my career, my professional pursuits. Everything always seems to tie back to the notion of teams, the notion of creating something bigger than oneself by doing it with others. So that whole journey as a youth, and then in my early 20s playing at Stanford, that has absolutely influenced and is a part of everything that I have been doing my whole life.
Yeah, that's great. So let's get right in then. Catalyst. Yeah. I want to hear the background. I've seen it from the internet, but I'm interested to hear it in your words.
Yeah. So really, it was what Catalyst is, and we'll dive into more what this means in just a moment. But Catalyst is what I call an industry integrator. Again, we'll come back to that in just a moment. But the impetus behind Catalyst was because of my journey in healthcare. So there I was, as I mentioned to you, Brian, this about 10 plus years working with large device companies, then entering into the entrepreneurial world with my startup. And there was really one common thread through all of those kind of pit stops along the way, whether it be with large co or the entrepreneurial type of environment. There was one thread that was consistent throughout. The fundamental disconnect and the islands that we live on within healthcare. What do I mean by that? Over here we have health systems, and then over there on that island we have the payers. Over here on that island are academic partners. Over here on this island we have the startups. Oh, and by the way, in that proverbial room, the patient's voice isn't even in there, right? And I just saw that over and over and over again, and it was maddening to me, because here we are with the most complex industry in our country, the largest industry in our country, 20% of our GDP and growing, and more importantly, an industry that touches every single one of us, whether it be that we work in the industry or that the industry is to serve us. And I said, there's got to be a better way. If we are going to ignite a revolution to reimagine the health of our country and the health of this industry, we have to do this together. It's too complex. There's too many moving parts. And one segment of the industry isn't going to do it themselves. The established players aren't going to do it themselves. The entrepreneurs surely can't do it themselves either.
And to pause on there, it's not that it's that they're incentivized almost against doing it, right?
Well, that can be a whole nother podcast episode.
Yeah, right. But yeah. But I mean, saying they're not going to do it themselves, that's not meaning they don't have an interest in doing it. It just is hard.
It's just hard,
kind of
absolutely right. I mean, because there needs to be a great way to frame it up. No, there are a lot of folks in these established players. Think of the Kaisers or the Anthems or the Aetnas, Uniteds, right? There are a lot of leaders. Rasu, a dear friend of ours, who's part of the Pink Sox tribe, chief strategy officer now at Atrium Health, was the chief innovation officer at UPMC, two massive health systems in our country. He totally gets it, but he'll be the first one to admit it's hard. And so, yes, so to your point, what I kind of recognized was, we need to start knocking down the barriers between these stakeholders, start knocking down the silos and working together. And so how Catalyst came about was, after I sold that startup, I remembered the time that I had my startup parked in a co-working space, right? So a lot of us have heard WeWork or these co-working environments where we put a lot of startups under one roof. Brian, that experience with my startup was fundamentally game-changing. The people that I got to meet, the mentors that I got to engage with, venture capitalists, potential folks that were going to buy and leverage our technology. Oh, and then of course, I was able to spend time with other entrepreneurs and have a beer in the afternoon with them and cry in our beer, because it's so hard to build a startup, right? It was completely game changing for me personally, professionally, in the exit of my startup. But here's where it fell down in regards to just creating a co-working space for startups. It goes back to what we were just saying. I believe that we have to have all stakeholders in the same environment, not just the startups. And so that's what Catalyst is. It's a 180,000 square foot city block campus in downtown Denver, bringing together Fortune 100 into the same environment with a one-woman startup and everything in between. Private enterprise, government, academia, nonprofits, and Brian, brace yourself. We will even have the patient involved.
Wow.
I know. Trust me. Hey, you wanted to get provocative on the podcast. There you go.
There you go.
So that's what we're doing. So this is not an incubator.
Mm-hmm.
We house them at Catalyst. This is not an accelerator. We house those as well. And this is not just a co-working for healthcare like a WeWork. That's just one floor of 7 total floors. Multiple health systems that call this place home. 4 different academic institutions, 5 different associations. As of the recording of this podcast, I think we're up to like 65 startups. It's an unbelievable environment, and every single day, these leaders from all different aspects of the industry are physically colliding on campus, which then creates serendipitous collisions that lead to innovative sparks.
Yep. That's where it is now. Was that the vision from day one?
Sure was.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
And
now, how we got there, twists and turns
Sure.
along the way. But that, again, it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, that I just saw these silos and these islands. And then I said, we got to knock these down. We got to start understanding one another. And if we so it's one of these things, don't overthink Catalyst is what I like to say a lot of the times when I'm presenting about it. It's truly in its purest form. It's a neighborhood in a building with all of these players from different aspects of this industry we call healthcare, building relationships, building deep community bonds. So no longer is it transactional, right? Like no longer are you the health system and I'm the vendor. No, these are deep personal ties. And it is amazing when you start laying that social fabric down, the partnerships that come out of that. It's
I can only
inspiring.
imagine. And I'm guessing, just to elaborate, when you say people don't talk, I think that's even within large companies
100%.
too, because the traditional model, or at least the model I've experienced, is silo out all the different functions. Maybe now more than ever they're talking because of technology, but they still kind of operate as their own little world.
Oh, I mean, we hear about health systems. They'll have 6 different telemedicine pilots going on that they don't even know about.
Yeah.
This isn't the same health system. That's crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So
No.
is that happened? You saw that from both an internal kind of company perspective as well as just an external, hospitals and pharma and
Oh,
government.
absolutely. Again, through that journey of with my own startup, the journey with being with those large device companies, helping build one of the now nationally ranked healthcare innovation clusters in the nation in Colorado. I've been there since kind of day one. To see all of that and to kind of what you just described, to see these disconnects, I'm just like, I know we can do better.
Yeah. So how did you bring it to life? Did you go and knock on people's doors? Is that where it started?
So again, it's all about building community, right? And that's what I'm just kind of core at, and letting these leaders know in all of these organizations that call Catalyst home, and your listeners can go to catalysthealthtech.com. Proof's in the pudding. Go to the community page. You can see the roster. It speaks for itself. But having those relationships and those leaders knowing that if Mike Biselli says he's going to do something, they know that he's going to deliver. That's just kind of how I've always, kind of ran my life, and with pure authenticity that if you're going to go to bat with me, I'm going to take care of you. And sharing with them a vision that what we're doing today is not going to prepare us for tomorrow in an industry that is going to be demanded to be changed, not only by policy and regulatory, right, but also the patient. The patient is, as you know, is turning into the consumer. They are not interested in the healthcare system of yesterday at all.
Yeah.
And so and I've been telling these leaders, whether you got to wake up to it or else you're going to be left behind. And an environment like a Catalyst can help you prepare for tomorrow.
Yep. So talk about bringing these folks together. What's it like?
Oh my
what are the
gosh.
conversations like? What are some of the insights that are gained?
It's unbelievable. I mean, there's so many examples. I mean, we could probably do a whole nother episode. We could do a whole nother episode just on the partnerships that have come out of the building. A couple I can highlight. SiriusMD. SiriusMD is one of the fastest growing telemedicine platforms in the United States right now. Years ago, they were a 2 or 3 person team. This is 2 years before we even opened the doors of the campus. They had signed their agreement to be a part of the campus about the same time Kaiser did. A $64-something billion health, right, third largest health system in the United States. And just as an example, I said, how about we all get together? We're all going to be neighbors on this campus, in about 2 years. Let's get together and get to know one another. That happened, and then, of course, they started building, again, right, that fabric, the neighborhood, the community, and they started building good, deep ties together, and one thing leads to another, and now Kaiser Permanente is leveraging the SiriusMD technology in big, big ways. But, I mean, I can go after one example after another. Our female leaders on campus, they created an entire movement called Women of Catalyst, right? And they every month they have a meetup and bringing together incredibly passionate female leaders in our industry to help empower each other. And so to tie that all together, Brian, what I always love to say is the following. Our ownership team, it was our job to build the best vehicle we could, the campus, and then to get the heck out of the way and throw the keys to all the leaders that I just described and let all of them drive us into a new future of healthcare. Not up to me. I just wanted to create the environment to allow that to happen.
That's awesome. And I imagine there's so much education that happens, and that when one industry, one component of the industry is talking to another. From my personal experience doing the podcast, it's always learning because I don't have deep insight. Does that happen frequently? I imagine almost daily.
I think last week alone on a Wednesday we had 6 different events happening at the same time. Right, we have a 300 something person event hall on the ground floor. We got shared assets throughout the entire campus, and there's like literally events going on simultaneously throughout the whole building. There's learning going on all the time. It's unbelievable. American Medical Association just hosted a learning event. People are coming in from out of town to host their events there. It is associations are coming there to host events. And startups are hosting. I mean, it's just, I literally can't even keep up with it anymore.
In a lot of ways, education's the entry point to innovation, I would say.
Oh, so absolutely.
Is that how it plays out a lot of times, where you share knowledge and then suddenly these new insights come?
Yeah. So
almost from nowhere?
Again, so we have an entire operations team, community management, and events management team members. That so if you and I were a startup, right? Say we're doing something in AI, right? And we want to educate the community. We can work with the Catalyst team members and put together a lunch and learn and invite people to come in, both that live on campus or people that don't live on campus, and come in and learn about what we're doing in AI for XYZ, right? That's a big component of it all is Redox, right? Redox is one of the fastest growing kind of tech companies in our space right now. Nico, the president and founder, just recently moved to Denver, and he now calls Catalyst home. They just had the Redox Summit there, brought in people from all over the nation, used our event hall, right? This kind of stuff is happening all the time now, and I literally cannot keep up with how many events are happening, which is mission accomplished for me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? I want to jump to entrepreneurship in a sec, but is there anything else from Catalyst that you want to highlight that's worth mentioning?
I think it's one of the things I do want to highlight is that I hope it becomes and will continue to be that kind of metaphorical beacon on the hill, that the light on the top of the tower that says, you know what, we can in fact reimagine healthcare and reimagine the health of our country when we do it together. What I have seen for so many years in this industry is this sense of parochialism, this sense of we can't work together, we're competitors, or the sense of orthodoxy. This is how it's always been done, right? And that just does not exist on campus. Matter of fact, it's not even allowed. The culture that has been created amongst these stakeholders there, that stuff has just been checked at the door. Anything is on the table. Assume nothing, challenge everything. And I just hope that it continues to show the rest of the nation when we work together, it is amazing the things that we can accomplish. And if we were able as a nation to put a man on the moon 50 years ago, I know we can reimagine this industry that touches all of us. Because if we don't, it has the potential of bankrupting this country. And on my watch, I ain't going to let it happen.
Yeah, we all suffer in the process.
100%.
Yeah.
Literally, in many ways.
Yep. So going backwards then, you made the jump from medical device to
tech.
Taking on your own, starting your own company.
Yep.
So talk through that transition, because I imagine it wasn't It's not the easiest jump, especially
Petrifying.
in healthcare.
Yeah, petrifying. Now I'm a serial entrepreneur. Now it's just the world I live in, right? It's just what I'm used to. It is not for the faint of heart. I'm very fortunate. I get to mentor and advise a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs and startups. And I'll be the first one to tell them this is not for everybody. It challenged my marriage. It depleted my bank account. It is not easy. You have to be ready for it. A lot of entrepreneurs see the shiny stories on CNBC or in Forbes or Fortune, right? Those are the needle within the needle of a haystack, right? And that can happen, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong to aspire to be that, to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Mark Benioff. That's great. But again, those are the needles within the needles of the haystack. You have to understand what you're getting yourself into if you're going to jump into this world. Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally with family, friends, or otherwise. It's very lonely at times. But, and also what I always mentor is and advise, don't ever jump into this if you're just chasing just the dollar. If that's the only that's the primary reason that brought you into it, you will absolutely fail, no questions asked. Because there is, when you're crossing the chasm, as we've heard many times, there's always that valley of despair, right? Mm-hmm. And if you were chasing the dollar, you're going to die in the valley, because inevitably every single entrepreneur really goes through. I'm reading a book called Loon Shots right now by Safi Bacall, and what he's talking about is there's always 3 instances of death for a big idea to come to fruition, and if you don't have that fire burning in your belly to get you through those valleys of death, it ain't gonna happen, right? So it's not easy, but man, do I love what I get to do.
Yeah.
This is no longer work. This is who I am, and this is my mission in life.
Yeah. Would you say, you talk about entrepreneurship and healthcare not being for everyone, would you say something that you have to have is you have to almost love the challenge?
Not almost, you have to.
Okay.
Period. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This stuff rips me out of bed every single day. I can't turn it off, right? Some may say that's unhealthy, but I just love what I get to do. I love it.
Yeah.
It never gets old. There's always something to learn. I get to hang out with leaders like you, right? I get to hang out with amazing minds every day, challenging me and showing me new ways to think about this very complex industry. I love what I get to do, and I hope you can hear it. I can't turn it off. I love it.
It definitely comes through.
Yeah.
So how would you, I think you have such an interesting perspective because you were an entrepreneur and now you advise and you see a lot of different companies and a lot of different startups. What I'm most fascinated is you have healthcare such a massive beast, and you can take on way more than you can chew, and it's not hard to do, I don't think. So as an entrepreneur or as a startup, you coming up with the idea to start a business, do you almost have to figure out how you fit into the bigger picture? Is that a big part of developing your strategy?
I mean, there's lots of parts, right? I mean, I think that's one piece of it. I think, and if we're really, talking about being an entrepreneur in healthcare, right? Because you smash those two together, then it gets really unique, right? We're not talking about, building a video game app, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about very complex environments. And so if you want to enter this space as an entrepreneur, you have to understand how the money flows, how policy works, how regulatory works, right? It's a multi-sided marketplace, right? From insurance companies to consumer plays to providers to you yourself being an entrepreneur. It is a very complex environment. So you have to understand all those moving parts, right? Sometimes I'll mentor or talk to young aspiring entrepreneurs, and they're like, "Yeah, we're going to build this app and we're going to do this," and like, well, how are you going to get reimbursed? Well, they're just going to pay for it. Well, who's going to pay for it? Do you know what a CPT code is? Do you know what an ICD-9 or 10 code is? Do you know what a DRG? No. Like, you have to understand all of those moving parts as well. So there's a lot to learn. I'm still, that whole cliche, the more I know, the more I learn, the less I know. That's where I'm at. It's unbelievable. But, you got to understand just some of the fundamentals of what makes this industry tick.
How do you go about bridging that gap? Because I imagine it's really difficult for anyone to have the level of depth you probably need across the board. So do you try to find partners? Do you learn as much as you can?
Learn as much as you can. Surround yourself with people that are better than you, right? Always do that. Try to figure out where your gaps are and go fill those gaps. Spend time with people, quote unquote, on the inside, right? Go and find opportunities to speak with executives of payers, executives for the providers, right? Learn from them. Come to a conference like health, right? And to engage those folks. You can always pick up new things about, again, this very complex industry.
Sure. And then when a company comes and works at Catalyst, do you provide service? I think you said get out of the way, but are you there if they need consulting, need advice?
No, the community is. So
okay.
Again, we are, Catalyst is at its core a pure real estate play, right? So we don't take equity in startups. I don't believe in that model that if you and I were a startup and you wanted to house out of Catalyst, that then you have to give Catalyst equity to do that. I don't believe in it, so we don't do it. We're a membership paying real estate organization. Our larger community members like a UC Health, a Hitachi, Medical Group Management Association, Kaiser, and others, they have the long-term leases in place to stabilize the campus for the long term. But then, again, like Brian, if you and I were a startup, it's kind of that traditional co-working membership, month-to-month kind of membership, and that's on our fourth floor. So we have 7 total floors. The fourth floor intentionally parked right in the middle of the building, so all the other big players come and hang out. We have an internal community cafe where everybody hangs out during the day for lunch. That was all very intentional. But that fourth floor where the co-working space is for startups, that's more on that month-to-month type of agreement. So now somebody might raise their hand and say, I have this need, right? So we have an internal communications platform for the several hundred people that call Catalyst home. And you can virtually raise your hand and say, I have this problem, and then somebody else can say, I can help solve for that, or I know this person that can help solve for it. So yeah, we ourselves, we don't provide those services. We want others to come in and do that.
That's great. That's so cool. It's kind of a self-fulfilling.
It's a complete Switzerland. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, is there anything else? We covered entrepreneurship. We covered Catalyst. I want to go to Burst IQ, but I want to make sure you have such a depth of background. I feel like I'm bouncing around too fast.
No, this is what it's all about on these podcasts, right? Let's just have a conversation. No, I think, I will say I've been in this now for many years. And I don't know about you. I know you have quite the depth of experience as well, but I'm definitely feeling the tide starting to change. I'm starting to get that sense that the day of reckoning, in a good way, is coming. You're starting to notice the conversations are changing with healthcare executives. You're starting to see more entrance into this marketplace, whether it be the Amazons of the world, the CVSs, the Walmarts of the world, which I find incredibly exciting. The tone and the sense of this innovation wave, you can feel it growing.
Yeah.
Quite quickly. I don't know about you.
Yeah, the metaphor I use is a high school dance where I think a few years ago everyone was at the dance, but
against the wall.
Yeah, and now a few people are dancing.
Getting on the floor?
Yeah, and I think more people are going to start funneling in. That's definitely.
So what's the song getting them on the dance floor?
Yeah, good question. We'll have to figure that out.
We'll put that in the episode notes.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think that's the exciting part for me, and I'm sure your sports background, you share my idea that I want to be on the winner. I mean,
absolutely.
I think there is going to produce winners and losers.
Oh, yeah,
and that's not. I mean, that's what happens. That's the outcome of innovation.
That's what happens within the life cycle of innovation and disruption. That's just natural.
Yep. So,
and honestly, hopefully, there are losers, and the ones that are holding us back are done. Right. Get out.
Yep.
Right.
And I think that's the health conference. Just seeing the guest list is so fascinating. It's across the board. I mean, I think to your point, everyone recognizes it at least. Yeah. I think now we're in the place where we're trying to figure out how to bring it to life, which is the hard part.
Yeah, I think, we first had to get there mentally. Like, okay, we need to do this.
Yep.
Now it's the the tactical part of it. Like, okay, how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
We now believe in this new reality, but oh my gosh, how are we now going to get there? And I think we're starting to get into those conversations more and more, which is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk Burst IQ then. I want to hear.
Yeah.
I intentionally didn't go deep into this because I wanted to hear the background and how you got involved.
Yeah, so it's an interesting journey as well, right? It's again, this whole thing. I don't even call what I do a career. It's just my journey on reimagining this industry that I care so deeply about. So let's rewind the clock a little bit. So I've been an advisor to Burst IQ, and Frank Ricotta, our CEO, who I hope will be on your podcast for a future episode, because he's a wonderful mind, a world-class expert in this space that we're going to talk about. But I've been fortunate enough to be an advisor to the company since its inception in 2015. But earlier this year in 2019, I knew, let's call it fall of 2018, I knew by spring of 2019 that the Catalyst was going to stabilize, that the operating teams were going to be in there. It was going to be, operational, kind of standalone. And I said, I'm going to go and do something I've never done before in my entire career. I'm going to go take a sabbatical. Now, for our academic partners, sometimes a sabbatical for them means a year. For us entrepreneurs, that means like a month, right? So that felt like a long time. So I did. I went and took a sabbatical for 1 month. I've never taken off time of that length, and went to Asia. And for the first 2 weeks, spent time with friends and family over there. And then the last 2 weeks, intentionally spent those last 2 weeks by myself. Everything from living with and spending time with monks in Laos to time in Vietnam and finishing in Hong Kong. And Brian, those 2 weeks were incredibly magical, and it leads to what we're going to talk about with Burst IQ. While I was there, I said, well, what am I going to do next? This campus is probably going to be hopefully leased out by summer of 19. Mission accomplished. We did that. I said, well, what am I going to do next? Right? I still got a lot of gas left in the tank, and I'm done building campuses. I want to get back into tech. And I said, well, let's flip it on its head a bit. What's one of the biggest pinch points? What is one of the biggest levers that needs to be pulled to help create the revolution within health and healthcare, not just here domestically, but around the world? And while I was over in Vietnam, during these kind of diving down these rabbit holes and studying and thinking through all this, everything kept coming back to data and how sequestered it is, and how just it pent up it is, and how we don't even know how to leverage it, right? And that can be a whole nother series of podcasts in and of itself. But it kept coming back to that. And so when I got back to Denver, and I said, okay, I'm going to go and unpack that whole thing that I learned, all this stuff that I learned while in Asia, after I get the building leased out, hit that mark in the summer. And then I went and met up with Frank and had some good Colorado craft beer together, and told him all the stuff that I kind of experienced while over in Asia. And he said, Mike, yeah, that's exactly why we at Burst IQ exist. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to secure and unleash the data at scale across the globe. So one thing led to another. These are world-class experts in their space, phenomenal minds. And I said, I would love to help be a part of the team to tell the story, to build that community of leaders around the globe, of health data anchors and innovators, to properly secure and unleash health data in many different forms and fashions. So at its core, what we are is a IP, plenty of IP around it, but we are a platform at Burst IQ that creates health profiles for people, places, and things. But then more importantly, Brian, to empower the interactions between them at scale. So again, you as a person, the things that you wear, your wearables as things, and then places can be full-on locations like a country, right? And so it's amazing. It's amazing what we have been seeing over the past number of years. But now the conversations that we're in today, talking to entire countries of having this platform empower those connections, right? And so we're really focused on the complex and granular consent of data and what that looks like. And I couldn't be more excited about it, because hopefully you've noticed so far during our time together, I don't like to just nibble at the edges.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I'm going to swing the bat, I'm swinging for over the fences, right? And I wanted to go after something foundational and big. And I found that home at Burst IQ.
That's awesome. I want to go back to your sabbatical.
Yeah.
What was the driver for that? Was that to get away, to let the dust settle? And
it was, again, I have no problems being completely transparent and real and authentic when I share my story. Those 5+ years of bringing Catalyst to a reality were probably some of the hardest years ever for me personally, professionally, mentally, emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
That was incredibly hard. Like I said, it put my marriage at risk, friendships, like I said, financial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depleted bank accounts, right? So I knew, like I told you, we were trending to really have this thing stabilized by spring of spring of 19. I knew that in 18. And I said, I have to do this for me.
Yeah.
I recently wrote a blog post about it, and the folks listening in on this podcast can go to mikebiselli.com/content to find it, and it's called My Next Big Journey. And I talked about it in that podcast that Mike needed to check in with Mike.
Yeah. And
I just knew I needed to do it, Brian, and thank God I did. It was worth every moment. And to be honest with you, a quick tangent, and I think it needs to be said, and I say this a lot now on stage on my talks. This whole notion of not taking time off in our country is a complete and utter fallacy. I think it holds no merit. Some of my best ideas have now coming out of that sabbatical, or when I go and ski for the day in Colorado, I have some of the best ideas bombing down the mountain, right?
Yeah.
So taking time away from our professional pursuits is actually a very healthy thing to do, not only for the growth of your professional pursuit, but what it does for you, personally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, for your family. And so people are like, Mike, what, are you nuts? You're going to go and take a month off and go to Asia? I sure am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? I'm probably going to do it again in a couple of years because it was that beneficial for how I was able to disconnect from the day-to-day compression of things here and have a clearer sense of where I want to go tomorrow. So yeah, I'll probably do it again.
I think that's such an important message, especially as a leader, when you have responsibilities like for people's livelihood, giving yourself a mental break. I had the exact same experience where I just went to Italy for 10 days.
Oh, good for you.
Completely disconnected, and
I'm sure the food was terrible.
Yeah, I know. Well, and I'm gluten free, so it was like my first. I haven't been able to eat pizza for the first 26 years of my life, so it was like a kid in the candy store.
Good for you.
But coming back, I felt like a different person. I mean, and same thing for you. I had problems that were right in front of me that I couldn't even see because the whirlwind of meetings and email and day to day. And I think I came back trying to challenge myself to just create more blank space. It's so hard in the age of distractions and the age of always being connected that creating that space is so critical, because like I had the exact same thing. My best ideas come during that space.
Yeah.
Just where you stop thinking about the problems, you stop thinking about anything, and it's like, bam, there's the answer.
Absolutely. No, I mean, like I said, some of the best ideas and some of the worst ideas that didn't work out were dropping in a run at like, Vail or Keystone or Breckenridge, because that's why one of the big reasons I live in Colorado, I get to play in this amazing playground called the Rockies. And some of the best things that I've ever done in business were skiing down a mountain with 2 feet of fresh powder, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
So Burst IQ, you tackling the data problem.
Yeah.
Explain. So it's a platform, and is the driver behind it to connect the different data sources? Is that
so? Yeah. So
level?
a lot of problems that we see, and this is more macro. And I know Frank, our CEO, will definitely get into the weeds with you, and I can't wait for you to hear kind of his vision for this and where he's taken our organization. But and again, me being an advisor with him as well for so many years, we've been seeing the same thing over and over and over again. Is how can a company like a Burst IQ create an environment where I can still own my data, but then consent it where I need to, when I need to who do I need to, who I can consent it to, etc., and then maybe relinquish consent, etc. Data, and especially in an environment like healthcare, right? I mean, you have one data breach, and that could put you down. That could put you under as an organization, right? So we are HIPAA and GDPR compliant, and that was foundation building block number one. We have to have those control mechanisms in place. And so Yeah, it's just been amazing to watch. We're focused within the world of IoT, medical device, pharma, diagnostics, digital therapeutics. Like I said, we're in conversations with entire countries to power the opportunity around, health data and the liquidity of it. It's incredible.
How do you go about as a company trying to define the scope of what you're going to look at? Because I know you said you want to tackle the big problems. The bigger the problem, the harder it is generally, right?
It is, but the nice thing is that, again, I can't take credit for it whatsoever. It's the brilliance behind the founding executive team of this organization. These folks are world-class experts in this space, and they built the platform to be able to play at scale, right? So you asked that question, but they actually are really, really focused at doing one thing brilliantly: consent, right? And they're going to do that and do it at a world-class level. But that one thing can be applied to so many other bigger things, right? But Frank says we're going to stay laser focused at being the leading platform for consent.
Gotcha.
It's a big deal,
So
and management.
And what's your role?
So I'm essentially the soft side of the business, right? So I'm our chief community officer. I'm here to build just like I did at Catalyst, but now on a global scale. We want to build a community of people that want to take health to the next level on a global scale. So to find those health data anchors, the big players, right, like a big pharma company or a big health system, right, and then the innovators as well, to come together in this environment that is Burst IQ. So of course, we're a technology company. That's great, but more importantly, we want to help be the leader of a movement, of changing a mindset, of showing the world at scale what could be possible through an environment like what we're creating at Burst IQ.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Man, you're aiming too low.
Well, you only live once.
That's awesome. I love that.
It's fun.
And I think the community aspect, I've talked to a bunch of folks that are tackling the interoperability or some sort of data transfer, and I think I haven't heard that mentioned, which is always surprising to me because you have 10 interoperability data sharing companies. How do they all work together? Like, what's the end game? And so I think the fact that you're taking into account all the upstream and downstream,
we literally can work with all of them. We're agnostic, right? Yeah. We're just here to connect where we can connect folks, right? And that's what we do. We have an entire developer community. Angie Gallagher, one of our team members, she's heading up the entire kind of startup community for us. So we allow startups to come on the platform and leverage the toolkits as well. It's been I've only been formally operating with Burst IQ now as of this recording only for past couple months. But what we've already have got ourselves into is pretty darn exciting, and I couldn't be more I couldn't be more honored to work alongside these world-class experts in this space.
Sure.
Laser focused on achieving what they know they can with this platform. It's incredible.
You can take this question a couple ways in relation to Burst IQ or just a broader sense in healthcare, but I guess what do you see coming in the future? Like what's kind of the next frontier?
Yeah, that is a big question. And I think the big one is I think you're going to continue to see this groundswell of the patient morphing into the consumer, right? We've heard a lot of talk about that over the past number of years, but I think you're starting to see this happening more and more and more. And payers and providers and the companies that are to support the industry are starting to take that into account, right? We're starting to put the consumer at the center, the patient, now the consumer, at the center of the conversation. That literally did not exist in previous quote-unquote models, right? Like it was, the doctor's going to prescribe this is what I'm going to do, right?
Yep.
No, that doesn't happen anymore, right? And so I think we're going to continue to see that, but more importantly, I think it's only going to accelerate faster and faster and faster, which I'm incredibly excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so go ahead. Yeah, so seeing that, I hope that we'll continue to see, which will also then help propel this, at least domestically, moving away from the fee-for-service environment into a value-based care environment. I think that could also help unleash a lot of innovation as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that seems to be when you talk to anyone coming from a technical angle in healthcare, that's the driving force, right?
Absolutely.
To change that.
Put
that
things at
dynamic.
risk, value-based care. I think that could really help unleash a lot of innovation as well.
Yep. Well, I have one final question I wanted to ask that I've been closing out with
Sure.
all the guests. But before that, I still feel you have such a broad perspective. And is there anything that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to highlight, or closing thoughts?
No, just thank you for what you're doing and getting the word out on troublemakers like me out there, right? Not taking no for an answer, but no, I think we covered it. I think this is awesome.
Yeah. So the question I've been ending on is, what either excites you now? What's the most exciting part about being part of this crazy world we're in? Or what excites you most about the future?
I think, and I say this a lot in a lot of my motivational talks that I give. Technology and innovation is here. That's the easy part of all of this. This crazy world we live in. That's actually the easy part. It's here. There's amazing technologies out there, innovations. It's all there, ready to go. It's the mindset. It's the culture within our industry. And what I'm most excited about, and we kind of touched on this already, but what I'm most excited about is this shift in mindset. That I think that's where the keys to unlocking this mystery reside, in shifting our mindset, shifting the culture, right? Taking risk. And again, all my talks, I always then put an asterisk. I'm not saying putting the patient at risk, but taking risk and failing. That's okay, right? That's part of the innovation life cycle. But to see the shift in mindset and culture, it's starting to permeate faster and faster throughout the industry, and that to me is what I'm most excited about.
That's when we can really shoot out of a cannon.
You nailed it.
Yeah,
You nailed
yeah. And I've been to 2 talks, and both were about culture. So
Yep.
I think that seems to be the name of the game. And I think it's awesome, the culture you've imparted at Catalyst. I hope at some point I can get to Denver and see.
Oh yeah,
see
don't
that,
be shy.
'cause
Come on down.
I'm
Come cause trouble with us.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty neat environment. just
Oh,
to
we
see
have
it.
visitors come and you can post up and work out of there as much as you like. Absolutely. Come on. Don't be shy. Now the only prerequisite is that you have to be committed to cause some trouble with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're just listening when Mike says cause some trouble, or the leader, he's always this cheesy smile grin that he's got on his face. So I can validate he is a troublemaker.
Absolutely.
But one that we definitely need. And thanks so much for the time and sharing your perspective. It's been great. And,
Absolutely.
Go listen to his podcast. Say it once more.
Yeah, so Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. You can find it on your favorite player, or you can find it on my content page at mikebiselli.com, our projects page, mikebiselli.com/projects.
Great. Well, thanks again, and we'll be back with another guest soon.
Thank you.